You are listening to an American Free Press podcast.
Joining me on the line is Andy Ostrowski. Andy, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thank you, Dave, very much for giving me a call. I want to give a thank you to my friend Doreen up here who put me in touch with you and shot you the video. Some stuff is going on, and happy to be here with American Free Press. I've always been a great supporter of your guys' efforts there.
Thank you very much, Andy. I appreciate that, and I'm sure the newspaper does. I know they do. We just met actually about a month ago at a conference that the Nationalist Times was holding there in Pennsylvania. Doreen sent me some information about you being arrested. I did watch this video where actually you were on the computer in your home and police officers just helped themselves in and shut down what looked like the laptop monitor and arrested you. I want to get into that in great detail in a moment, but before we do, for the benefit of the listeners, can you give them a little bit of background about who you are?
Yeah, sure. The name's Andy Ostrowski. I was born and raised in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, Millersville University. I was the first graduating class at Widener University here in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Was trained for several years in the formal legal law firm environment and insurance defense stuff, which I didn't really find my way with, and wound up in about 2001 or so with a colleague by the name of Don Bailey, who was a decorated Vietnam veteran and former Michigan standout football star, statewide auditor general, etc., congressman. And we had civil rights practice. And the civil rights practice, when you start getting into those core issues of individual liberties and rights and freedoms of expression, et cetera, whistleblower protections, you go against some powers that be. And that kind of led me to a point where there was disciplinary proceedings going on around, and I could go on and on about a lot of it. But I do, because I just really am free of this commitment thing that we can talk about just within the past 48 hours. I haven't even been home 48 hours yet, and I was in for a week. And honestly, Dave, this was my third one this year. So I probably am the first so-called political dissident to be 906 and survive. And 302 is the commitment law here in Pennsylvania. So with all that being said, you just continue down the path trying to do the next right thing, and you wind up challenging some basic presumptions about how we operate in this world and this legal system and people's access to justice. So that's kind of what transitioned to this point now, because there was related litigation that I filed where I challenged the attorney law license and et cetera, et cetera. In any event, that all tangentially related to or directly related to the police coming in the other day. There was communications in which I had been engaged with some federal FBI agents, et cetera, regarding some litigation on these past commitments this year for me and some protections that I felt I needed to take. And I guess there was some concern that I was going to go on Facebook Live and talk about some things, and they put a stop to it. And the video really speaks for itself. And God bless all the people out there who recorded that and saw it happen. And thankfully, I had the foresight. I heard the police come into the door to hop on Facebook Live and just be resolute and stay there until whatever happened. And that's what happened. And 6 days later, and a 302 commitment hearing later, which a judge has ordered, a judge signed an order on Tuesday. So I was in there until Tuesday. Judge Spark up here in Luzerne County signed an order denying any commitment petition, basically saying I shouldn't have been there. There was no reason to have me there or hold me there. And here we are. And I come back and, frankly, my laptop was removed. I'd say stolen, a couple other items. And I'm just kind of sitting and was able to talk to a friend and get some access. I went down to the Wi-Fi at the McDonald's yesterday, and here I sit. Happy to talk to you.
Okay. Thank you, Andy, for explaining that. Now, you said that this is the third time that this has happened?
Yeah, this is the third time this year. There were twice in April. This, honestly, Dave, would get down a path that I'm not prepared to go down right now. There's a lot of personal things and private things for people that I want to respect with your audience, but there was some medical issues involved with someone in my life, and I confronted the doctor about it, and that precipitated the first one, and then it was kind of a bizarre thing. And really, though, the angle after the second one was that they were trying to institutionalize me. They were going to throw me in the state institution, and the psychiatrist said that to me almost expressly, if not expressly. And when they can't conjure up a criminal charge and give you a little bit of due process, sue me if I'm doing something wrong, get a restraining order or whatever. But the abuse of this mental health law to truncate people's due process rights is a real, real problem.
The previous ones, they're not directly related to this matter.
Well, they're all directly related because they're all directly related to my advocacy efforts. It's complicated, Dave, and too complicated to really try to unpack right now. But when I get connected with email here, I'll be happy to send you some more background information on that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Andy. About a month ago, I think it was August 23rd, you filed a motion. Can you give the listeners a brief summary of what the motion was about?
Sure. The litigation I talked about, there's a video out there called Andy Ostrowski versus American System of Justice Litigation Overview. That really gives a summary of where we were at. And where I'm challenging some real basic presumptions like the Federal Reserve System about due process and the corporate culture, et cetera, et cetera. But within that, I filed what was called a motion for declaratory relief, which is a vehicle that gives you access to have declarations made that certain things are constitutional, not constitutional, lawful, unlawful. And I did it to challenge the basis of the attorney law license. That's the basis of it. I had been a practicing lawyer until 2010 when I ran into some disciplinary issues. You sit as a lawyer and you think about these things and think, is there really a basis for this? And you just don't have time to look up. But as I distanced myself from the formal practice and started to look at these things, I just started to see that there really was no basis for the licensing of the practice of law. And the licensing of the practice of law really is an impediment to everybody's access to justice because your attorney is not free to advocate without risking his or her own property. That's the basis of it.
Do you think that that motion had an impact on what happened with the police coming over to your house?
In a sense, this is all related to the advocacy efforts. And this attorney law licensing motion is a very, very, very significant motion that really would upset the entire judicial structure in this country. And I believe that there is a very clear and compelling basis for it. I haven't even received anything on the status of that case since then, so I don't even know anything.
Let the listeners know how this whole thing unfolded. I watched the short video online, and you had heard a noise, and there was a Wilkes-Barre policeman at your door. Give a little background about what day it was, approximately what time it was, what you were doing, and how it unfolded.
Sure. I had made an announcement earlier that day. There were some things that were going on preceding this over the course of this year, i.e. the 302 commitments and some reports that I had made to some law enforcement and proper people that went unaddressed and unresponded to. So there were some continuing communications about that. And I was getting kind of aggressive about it because fully justified in making the kind of complaints to the people that I made them. And I disseminated them to some press and whatnot. So I got on Tuesday, it was 2:30 in the afternoon. I posted on Facebook and sent out emails to all these people, just letting them know. It wasn't to threat or intimidate. It was just letting them know I'm going on Facebook Live. And it wasn't within 15 minutes of that the police were at my door. And they did not have a proper warrant. They didn't have any paperwork. I had to kind of just as passively as I could resist them dragging me into an ambulance and throwing me in without seeing some paperwork. The video is going to speak for itself, but afterwards, they took me out. I had bruises and a little cut on my wrist from the handcuffs. And, guys, I don't want to fight. I don't want to fight. Just show me the paperwork. And they ultimately, I got something out of my car. But they wouldn't go get it. Finally, because I just kind of braced myself against the back of the ambulance, and I was going to make them drag me in. I wasn't going to fight. And then once I was in, I was just going to be real passive. But I said, you guys show me something, guys. And he pulled out some paperwork, and I didn't really even flip through it as long as I saw something. And then I cooperated. And then I was taken into the local ER where they process you, and then they sent me to a place down in the Philadelphia suburbs. And that was a horrific experience. It was clear. The agenda was, as expressed to me by the doctor, to get me on some kind of pharmaceuticals and or if I refused or resisted, to have me placed long-term and do it involuntarily. He specifically advocated for that in the hearing on September 22nd. It was horrific, but I survived it because I'm calm and cool. I didn't do anything wrong to anybody. I expressed myself in writing legal situations, and I was able to maintain the whole time I was in there because I got a good diet and health regimen, and I was calm and just allowed it to proceed and just hope for the best, not knowing what the result was going to be. But the order from the judge came on September 26th, and here I sit.
This was the 19th of September when they came into your home. What everybody could see is you talking to the laptop screen. You were explaining that there were police officers outside. Then all of a sudden, the next thing was that there were police officers inside the house. Maybe I missed something in the video. How did it go from them being outside to them being inside? Did you let them in?
Oh, no. I looked out the front window, and there was a cop climbing over my railing to come around back. So I went around the back door, I locked it, and I went on Facebook Live. And then somehow they got a key, but they got in the back door, and they came in with gloves on and with their tasers pulled, 3 of them, a female and 2 males, and you heard it right there.
So then you went down to this facility in Philadelphia. How long were you there for?
For 7 days. I got there early Wednesday morning and left there about maybe 4 o'clock on Tuesday afternoon.
What was that like, that facility? Was it like a prison or was it like a hospital?
Nah, they're like hospitals. You drive around and you see these such and such and so behavioral health care. That's what it is. It's the modern day asylum, I guess, because of the way the world's going. They can no longer accommodate these people in wings of regular hospitals, so they've got a whole behavioral health things. The staff who are in there, they're doing their job, and everybody treated me decently. The doctor is a different story, but people were doing their job, and nobody mistreated me, and they were all kind and decent people.
Did they try to force medicate you?
Well, yeah, they were bringing it every day. It's like, try this, try this. One doctor said, well, if you don't want to do it that way orally, we can inject you. I refused to take any medications. And I didn't make a big ruckus out of it. I just said, I'm not doing it. And that's why this doctor was angling for that in this hearing.
Let me just, for the benefit of the listeners, read this to them because this is the order following a hearing which was held on the 22nd. Pursuant to Section 303 of the Mental Health Act, which you discussed, and upon review of the report and recommendation of the substitute mental health review officer, and they mentioned the fellow's name there, it says here, ordered that you be committed to Brook Glen Behavioral Hospital for an inpatient hospitalization program not to exceed 5 days from the day of the hearing. This petition was denied, as you mentioned, by Judge Thomas F. Burke.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the judge denied it, but they still kept you in there for all that time. Is that legal? Do you have any recourse?
Of course, yes. This is a gross violation of all my fundamental civil rights. There's not one that you can discount from it. Maybe even cruel and unusual punishment.
I imagine that the listeners would have to be alert on something like this happening with them.
This is why America Free Press exists. This is why the Nationalist Times exists. This is why you guys do what you do, because this stuff happens for real, folks. It happens for real. And like I said, I'm the first person to be 906 and come out alive and largely unscathed. And I'm thankful to have this voice so I can tell people out there, raise your voices, folks. What we're talking about is making a better world. We're talking about telling public officials that they work for us. Government officials, whatever you want to call them, and that the courts are for the people. And what's going on in Pennsylvania in this court system is allowed to go on and no one addresses it. Don't feel ashamed about raising your voice about it. It's what's right. It's families and children and people's homes and lives and property and futures. And we just got to stand up for it and don't be suppressed for it. And I did all this knowing that a lot of this risk that I took, Dave, and I appreciate your support, and I hope your listeners take the message to heart. So thank you very much.
Andy Ostrowski. Andy, I want to thank you so much for the time you spent explaining all this to the listeners, and look forward to speaking to you again real soon.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot, Dave.